Hey there, guys. My name's Adam, and I'm doing Unthink Me today. Unthink Me is a show where we look at weird and artistic and creative kind of topics, things that come out of the minds of people with special interests. This is not a video about integral theory. I always like to say that when it isn't. I go on a long walk and think about stuff. I come back and I shoot a video like this. I actually have no idea whether I'm going to cover all the things on my mind or whether it's going to come out the way that I expect. And that I've realized is part of my process. As I taught integral theory, it started with just me like farting out how it goes in my head. As I get more into discussions and debating with people, it really helps me to outline my thoughts. I'm working more than 3 jobs right now, but like 3 main ones. So I'm really pushing just to get some earthly money right now. And this is about all I can do for Unthink Me. I'm sorry to everybody. I'm noticing that I'm getting some really awesome comments and I'm getting some really awesome activity. Thus far, I'm pretty absent from it, but I will jump back in. It's literally, I'm working like 12-hour days. My voice is totally worn out. I have been screaming, but I think it's actually just from fatigue. I'm doing construction and a lot of warehouse kind of stuff, so it's pretty physically intensive, and I'm pretty physically exhausted. I'm very froggy today. I want to share with you 3 cool things that came out this year in music. I wanted to share with you some of my music that's really inspiring that I love. First of all, I have to mention my favorite band of all time. They have been my favorite band for a super long time, and nobody's ever come close. My second is Stuart Davis, the songwriter, and my number 1 is Wonderful. They were on the show. We did an interview. They're just the most amazing and generous and graceful people. It was so cool to get to talk to these guys about this music I've been obsessed with for a super long time. And I just get to talk to the people who made it. Just say whatever, hear what they have to say. It was really, really crazy. And it was scary. I'm like starstruck by these people that I've adored for such a long time and felt such deep feelings with their art, that it's really crazy to meet the people behind it. And, it's funny, like they kind of have the same attitude about it as I do, where it's just always been a mystery to them. And they're like, yeah, it's really cool, huh? Like, I don't know. I noticed that too. That's a cool thing about it. And so I've definitely learned when I meet my heroes, try not to gush, just don't gush at all. They hate that. I hate that when people gush at me. It's just, there's no comfortable way to handle it. There's really no way to convey to someone that you're a huge fan, because people will be fake about that and some people will be real about it, and you can't really tell the difference. So anyways, in case you missed that, Wonderful is this incredibly deeply spiritual, one-of-a-kind, very advanced but hidden advanced, secretly advanced musicianship group. Just lovely, spiritual, amazing people, intellectual and emotional depth coming out through their music. And they also did this amazing project called United States of Electronica, USE, that was very popular, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And oftentimes, if people have ever heard of these guys at all, it's USE that they've heard of. So their new sound is kind of a bit of a blending of that. They're calling it Night Dance, and it's a little bit more towards Wonderful, but it's still got that sort of electronica sound, that dancey sound of USE. After doing the show with me, and I expressed just a lot of love for all their music, but in particular that sound that they were doing that was so personal and so American and so Pacific Northwest and so spiritual, I was really into that, as it was such a powerful expression of collaboration between musicians and that sort of loving that can happen when really good musicians get together and go to a really deep place together. I'm so inspired by what those guys do. They were telling me on the show that they have tons and tons of like unreleased material, and I was kind of giving them a hard time, like, release it, dang it. So perhaps in response to that, and perhaps just in response to that sentiment from their fans in general, they did release one of their, they finished and and went over one of their older songs together. That's on Bandcamp. It's called Monrovia. I would give it a listen. It's fantastic, and it is that older, more spiritual sound. I warn you, I didn't even talk to them about it. It takes me a long time to get their music. When they first released Welcome to Dreamland, their other really big, cool album, it took me months before I even really got it and felt that it was as cool as the previous one. It takes a really long time for me to get. I might have to listen to 5 or 6 times before I really get how everything fits together and what about it makes it so unique. And I got to that point with Monrovia, so that's why now I'm out here talking about it, because it takes me that long to understand what I like about this music. So unfortunately, if you just give it a listen, and you're like me, you probably won't get that right away. And it'd take a lot of faith in me to keep listening to Wonderful for a while and kind of get what it reveals to you. It's such a unique sound that you don't even know like how it's kind of hitting you with new ideas that you don't really see in music a whole lot. This is another one of those groups that if you just give it a chance, like they will blow your mind. It's totally worth it. So I'm so crazy honored that they put that song out. I hope they keep putting out more songs like that. Really excited to hear their metal album. If I ever make it anywhere, hopefully I can be helpful to them, but they were extremely gracious to come and be on Unthink Me. I hope to have them back to talk about various things, perhaps getting more into philosophy and spirituality as opposed to just music. Number 2, another one of my favorites, Chris Ballou of the Presidents of the United States of America. Hear me out here. I know that's like really weird. I'm telling you, like I know the whole history of rock music and indie music. Like I'm into everything. And this guy is my hero. He is so cool. I remember in the 90s, I thought that Weird Al was a very serious artist and was very compelling from an emotional standpoint. And people would give me such a hard time because the idea was that music is always like serious and jaded and edgy and cool. Rock and roll, heavy metal, like rap, it's all very like aggressive and male, and there's a lot of panache to it. I like stuff that's a reaction against that. Ween, Presidents of the USA, Wonderful is another sort of reaction against that. I think a lot of us get tired of that attitude. And I mean, these are like, the whole thing of punk rock is like, I don't even know how to play music and I'm going to come out here and force it down your throat. And I can get into that from time to time, like if I'm skateboarding and in some hip hop cases, but in general, I don't have any respect for that. You showed up for a knife fight barehanded, which again, that's kind of cool. Like, let's see how you do. But I generally find it worse than silence to listen to music of that sort, which is not necessarily bad. Like silence is dope. Now it's much more common to think of Weird Al as like, yeah, he's a legit artist. I mean, he's one of the most longest careers in rock and roll, and he can do everything, and his shows are like more entertaining than most. It's like, what criteria do you use to determine if someone's interesting or not? And believe me when I say I've listened to some really objectively bad music, and I can get it. I can get into it. I understand that. Even some objectively bad music is some of my favorite. I'm a big Mike Patton fan. If all you know about Chris Ballou is Peaches and Lump and Video Killed the Radio Star and the Presidents of the USA hit singles, that's not on a tangent or anything. It's not like entirely different, but this is a guy who's made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hit singles like that, and they all are extremely bizarre, and they have themes that weave them together, and they're all coming out of this very, very odd man who just has a vision for how his music is, or a feel to it that's been cultivated over years and years of penniless busking and living in his mentor's apartment, again, with no money, playing the smallest, dumpiest stages, playing grunge, going all out, getting to the fame, getting in those big headlining gigs, being a hit band with singles and money. If you go beyond the singles and listen to just regular Presidents of the USA, I think you can get a big chunk of why I think he's so cool. First of all, it's not even a normal rock band. You wouldn't even really notice this in general, but they aren't playing rock. They're not playing normal instruments. The drummer doesn't have any crash cymbals, and I believe he's playing a right-handed kit, left-handed, so it's backwards. If you listen, it just kind of sounds like, wow, like this is really tight pop drumming. But he's always doing something a little interesting and complicated. Like there's always an element locking in with the progression of the music or the rhythmic progression. He's so plugged into the sound. Now, a big part of that is that they're not playing guitars either. It sounds like guitars. They're both electric guitars with bass strings on them, but one of them is lower than a normal guitar significantly. And then the bass, it only has 2 strings and it's higher than a normal bass. So very limiting in terms of how many notes you have. And that causes I actually built my own bass guitar. It's called Git Bass and Bass Guitar is what they play. It's an incredible instrument because you immediately find yourself playing these amazing, powerful riffs. This came from, if you know Mark Sandman of Morphine, Chris Ballou and Mark Sandman had a group called Supergroup together, and that's kind of where Chris found his way and found how he does what he does. And they had these instruments like this that you take normal electrical instruments and you string them up weird and you do little tricks to them. And they just found the Morphine sound is a very thumpy, funky kind of sound. Boom, 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 just really straight ahead. But it forces you into these riffs and power chords that you wouldn't really think to go to unless you were maybe on a detuned drop D sort of thing, but that'll lead you to more of a thrashy sound. This is pure funk because every note sounds like a pop bass hit on a guitar chord. So it's whoa. So even though it just sounds like normal guitar music, all their instruments are tweaked out in this weird way that kind of puts it in another world. And you'll notice about Presidents that the songs all seem to be about the sorts of things that a 9-year-old kid would have running through their head. They're all from a very kind of childish place, and it's almost like Chris goes to his inner childhood through the music, and he finds those more visceral and genuine parts of himself through kind of re-entering his childlike mindset. More interesting to me than the Presidents are his solo work. So he had a group called the Giraffes, which I believe was mostly him and stuffed animals. And I think that the rule was, I'm not sure if it was Giraffes, I think it was early Giraffes. The rule was you can't have more equipment than you could carry in your arms to the gig. The Giraffes, I think, is where he was going all out, just doing whatever he wanted and writing just songs that feel more like Chris Ballou himself. So then this went even deeper, where he actually, encouraged by his wife, he was in a grunge, alternative rock group, the Presidents, and it's kind of cool. The crowds who come there are teenagers and people who want to be cool or funny or, rock out. And there's a certain pressure to be ironic or edgy or anti this or that. And I don't think that Chris ever really bought into that. So he was reacting against that. And it comes to a head. He just, once he was kind of done with the mainstream rock stardom thing, he did this group called Casper Baby Pants, which is music for babies and little kids. And it's just so perfect for how he writes and thinks because he just goes to that childlike place anyway. Now, I don't care about cool. I'm a music teacher. I work with kids. I do baby songs all the time. So Casper Baby Pants was not at all off-putting to me. I found it just incredible. And in fact, I went to a concert in Seattle. It was a free concert at a park. There's Chris Ballou, 8 feet tall with a bald head, yellow t-shirt, jamming out. just a throng of little tiny people boogieing down, shouting things out, and he would call in response, and they all knew the words, and mom and dad knew the words, and it was such a wholesome, beautiful, and ecstatic musical experience that, man, I don't think I've ever seen a rock concert that ever touched anything like that. It blew my mind. I mean, I was tears pouring down my face. And I didn't, after the show, I didn't go up and talk to him because he had a little signing table with him and his wife, and it was just lovely, and there's a huge line. And I'm like, I'm not going to take some 6-year-old's 5 minutes to tell Chris how awesome he is or how much I loved his show. I'm a weird, creepy old guy with no kids dancing at a Casper Baby Pit, so I'm not touching that one. I noticed recently, every couple of years I check and see, like, has he done anything new? And I had been sitting on this collection of his old songs that he'd finished and put out called We Hear Music by the Giraffes, which is just on Bandcamp and YouTube, and it's like, it was like 30 songs. So that was my Chris Ballou for like a long time, and I just love that album. All of a sudden, I checked Chris Ballou on Bandcamp, and he's putting out like a full album of songs like every couple of months, and there's no like engine behind it. That it's not like a thing that gets announced. Like nobody cares. And I mean, we're talking like there's like 200 new Chris Ballou solo songs, which is exactly what I've always wanted out of him. It's just deep explorations of themes in really specific monological kind of directions. The production is entirely feeding that central theme, and it might be about like dopamine or skeletons in your closet or neon lights, just a simple concept, direct object writing, and go. I think that's exactly what works for him in his style. He is back to kind of traditional instrumentation and studio techniques, and I feel like that's kind of come full circle to where he doesn't need to be weird anymore in order to sound like amazing and perfect. Find him on Bandcamp, and he has like a bunch of new albums of material. Holy cow, check it out if you don't know anything more about this guy besides, the 3 awesome, funny music videos that were on MTV. Number 3. The Proto-Men are a Nashville-based supergroup. They're basically like the session musicians that you'd hire like in the studio. They kind of like snuck off and made their own thing just for passion and fun. It is a rock opera trilogy about the original Nintendo Entertainment System Mega Man 1 and 2 storylines, taken extremely seriously and told as like a dramatic rock opera style. They released Act 1 and 2 like a really long time ago. I want to say 10, 15 years ago. And everybody's like, okay, well, it's a trilogy. Where's Act 3? Where's Act 3? It's on a cliffhanger. We have no idea what's going to happen with Proto Man and Mega Man and Dr. Wily. If you're familiar with the video games, I can't stress enough, though, it takes it very seriously to the point where you will find it compelling as like a dystopian sci-fi narrative involving the Mega Man characters. What a masterpiece for anyone who struggled through those very difficult games and made it to the end or didn't. It's still tough. Act 1 was the thing I would play it at the gym to get pumped, to lift weights. It's really awesome, like dad rock, like training montage music, chiptune kind of elements since there's that video game theme, and it's very operatic. Act 2 went into like Les Mis territory where it was getting fully orchestrated, and the narrative was getting extremely dramatic to the point where it was almost like a stage musical in some parts. I was amazingly just happened to chance upon the live act at a Penny Arcade Expo, which I'm assuming is one of their bigger and better shows. They were like the main deal. It was an incredible concert. They were all dressed up in their costumes, their light stuff and stage dives and all kinds of theatrics. And it was just really excited to see all the main character singers come out and what they look like as people, because I'm thinking of video game characters when I hear these recordings. Finally, Act 3 is starting to come out. They've released Proto Men Act 3. It's finally happening. I thought it would never happen. They had spun off into this weird thing where they were touring on like a Queen tribute, and I couldn't care less about that. But the Proto Men, I'm all aboard. I can't believe it. I'm so happy that Part 3's here. I am a person who tends to have a special interest. That special interest usually comes about as I struggle and heal through a trauma of life. I seem to have one about every 4 years or so. And as a process of doing therapy and personally working through that, I tend to take on a special interest. For about 25 years, music was my special interest, and in particular, pop songwriting. I was a student of pop music. And so today I want to dig in a little bit. I want to tell you a little bit about my story as a musician. If you don't like anything that I like musically, the things that I say about it might not make a lot of sense. I am a person who was born in the 80s, raised in the 90s. Growing up in that time, MTV, music television, was a purely musical thing at the time, and it was a big leader in lifestyle and culture for young 90s teens. By comparison to today, I think the dream that like young people see as a way to escape the perils and responsibilities of adulthood was you would become a rock star, and then you would just have all this money and all the sexual things you want and all the fame and glamour, and you get to be everywhere and do every party, and you're the big that and you don't have you're not working hard was kind of the illusion created by the MTV rock star, is that they're all just partying all the time and they make great albums, and that's how it goes. That was the dream in my youth's generation. There's kind of every generation has their dream of stardom. You know, we're talking about the 1950s. You know, going to Hollywood and being a big star, getting in the cement in front of the Chinese theater. You know, different dreams for different times. And I feel like today that has moved over toward streaming and being an online influencer. I think that's kind of the new being a rock star. We can kind of break apart the vision and how that is a fantasy of adulthood that shirks all the responsibility of like working your way or having to do things that are undignifying. And so it is to that extent a toxic dream. And this is a thing that musicians from my generation talk about a lot. Another cultural difference today, everyone plays a guitar, everyone sings, everyone plays music. It's very, very common because people my age are dads and moms now, and they want their kids to be rock stars like they wanted to be when they were young. It's not such a big thing anymore to be a rock star. It's kind of cool in college to write songs, but musicianship isn't what it used to be. It used to be pretty weird. For example, the first time I played a bass guitar, I did not know what a bass guitar is or why it's in a band. I didn't understand how it was different from a guitar, any of that. And when I heard it, it was like a funny, I was like, whoa, that's cool. It does that. So it was like a totally strange, exotic world. Something gets them into this rock star idea because they've actually learned how to play some music, and they're going, like, what if I kept this going? Then I could be like one of those rock stars on TV. And, you see these guys in the 90s, hip hop was just kind of coming to mainstream. And, it's just like we came from nowhere. We don't know anything. Oh, here we are. We're millionaires. Everyone, we have this amazing career. We're great artists. All we did was like play a record of somebody else's. We just spun a couple seconds of this record and we talked over it in a really cool way. And I think everyone was really enchanted by it, like, oh man, it looks so easy to get on top of the game like that. Like if you just have a lot of style and personality, you can kind of do it. So this was hip hop. This was like rock and roll. This was the dream of being a rock star. And likewise today with streaming and influencing, it looks really easy to go on the internet and react to things that are happening right now in a genuine way. That seems really easy to do. And it is really easy to do. But to get a big following, to do it repeatedly, to be counted on as a source where people would go choose you instead of someone else, that's a whole different thing. That's just as difficult as it's always been. It's just as difficult as going into a room full of 1,000 strangers and becoming the most popular person there by the end. That's essentially the game of it. Now, I'm too old for that stuff now. I don't have any stars in my eyes whatsoever. I'm here to teach integral theory, and because I believe that it's a positive, beneficial, healthy thing that also works amazingly well as personal therapy for me, sharing my truth with the public, as it were, and finding some people answer back in ways that are affirming has been extremely powerful for me in helping me to develop personal security and self-esteem and a feeling of self-worth, which are absolutely what a lot of young to middle-aged men, not to pick out a group necessarily, but I'm just in a group, an identity group that I would say is kind of lost right now. I'm not including race in this. All the races are kind of included in this, but I think it's harder to find your way today as a young man. Not that it's ever been easy. A big part of what I'm trying to achieve with this channel is to interface with that energy, which is in myself, which is in a lot of you, which is in the meta so much, and just offer it a little bit of positivity and a little bit of hope. So the idea then is you have this party and you're the person leading the party. You're the conductor of the party. You're the music for the party. And that's really cool because the cool thing to do is go to the party and be at the party and be cool. The band is super cool, especially like the lead singer or the really flashy drummer, whoever's really flashy. So this is a dream, to go to the party and be the coolest person there. It's pretty simple, right? And in today's world, to go to the party and be the person there. Oh my God, look at his phone. He has 2 million subscribers on whatever. Okay, now you're the coolest person at the party. Everyone wants to know you. They're hoping you'll capture something and put it on TikTok or whatever. So the popularity contest and winning the popularity contest as a form of art and perhaps as a way of influencing the public dialogue and participating in the meta. That's where it's always been of interest to me. I've always wanted to participate in the dialogue. I consider there to be 3 categories of music: pop, jazz, and classical. What about EDM? That's pop. What about folk? That's pop. What about musical theater? That's pop. What about hip hop? That's pop. So pop is essentially using music to tell a little story or to set a mood. Of the 3 forms, it requires the least amount of talent as a musician, like musical skills and musical vocabulary and talent. But it requires perhaps the most artistry. It requires the most vulnerability, self-expression, critical thinking, self-awareness. I don't think that any of these 3 types of music are inferior to the others. I think they're just different systems of approaching the artistic organization of sounds. Jazz music is, of course, all of jazz would be included, but I would also include some blues, some funk, some souls, anything that's predominantly improvisational. The key element is that there isn't a page that tells you what you do next necessarily, specifically. It doesn't tell you specifically what to do next. And it isn't something that you've memorized particularly. It is sort of a reaction to the moment and what's happening in your mind, in your heart, on your instrument right now. And of course, you are playing through bits and pieces that you've internalized over time, but it is essentially improvisational. The rhythm is essentially improvisational. What happens in the next couple of phrases is essentially improvisational, usually around some sort of structure. There is totally free jazz where play random notes, everyone, and see if it sounds cool, things like that. A lot of hippie stuff would also be jazz. I see jazz as just ecstatic musicianship. It's momentary, it's improvisational. It is irregardless of how much talent or skill or knowledge you have about music. It's entirely up to what you do with that knowledge in this moment. So that could be just like banging a bottle over and over again on the table. You'd be jazzing, in my mind. But if you did that more and more and more, and you practiced at that, you'd probably develop more sophisticated rhythms and different ways to hit the bottle where it would sound different. And you'd eventually start to see a jazzy sort of thing start to happen. The classical musician has to be able to play any passage perfectly that they could possibly encounter. So they are music readers. They apply rules to the musical context. Once the thing is written, there's very little creativity. There's a little bit of creativity in the momentary expression, but predominantly you're expressing the thoughts of the composer as a tool in their system. So the composer is now sort of the pop musician with their ideas and themes and different themes that'll interplay and connect. And of course, because of that, classical music will always be the more sophisticated of the three approaches. Pop music and jazz music will always be drawing from classical music for their ideas and their technique base. So I want to stress that these are always bleeding over into one another. The rock band Fish would be they're totally a jazz band and they're totally a pop band. They totally do both. Wynton Marsalis or a lot of jazz players will actually do it in a classical way with everyone has sheets and they're playing a very specific thing with very little improv. So there's a lot of interplay and bleed over. I'm not trying to say a thing is one or the other, but as you listen to music, that would be the primary thing I would pick out first, is whether this is predominantly a performance to make you feel something, whether it's predominantly a mental composition that's being rendered in the life, or whether it's predominantly an uprising or upwelling from the momentary experience of the musicians. I would encourage any musician to pursue all three of these to some extent because they're so interrelated. If you don't have classical musicianship, there will always be a large group of people saying you have no ability, you're not talented, you're not any good. Classical musician is where you get musical skills and knowledge and theory. That can also go too far. If you're not jazz enough, you won't understand the soul of it or the physicality of it or the momentary nature of a performance, which is always relevant in music. And I've met a lot of musicians that play really well and they can't improvise a single lick. I mean, especially vocalists, singers who can sing songs really well, but they wouldn't know where to begin with making something up. And finally, with the pop musician, of course, there has to be a lot of soul in what you're doing and a lot of physicality. You're banking on that as much as anything. And you do have to know some chords. You do have to know some things about arrangement and melody and what works and what doesn't musically and ranges and things like that. So they all interplay, but there's a predominant focus in each of these three types of music. I myself have always been a student of pop music. Pop music is the most appealing to me. Short story snippets told through the organization of music and lyrics. Lyrics are, of course, the most important to pop music compared to the other types. The lyrics don't really matter as much in jazz or classical in most cases. In general, you listen to pop music even if it's a instrumental, you're listening for the vibe or the message or the imagery that it provokes or the mood. So it's entirely, if I were to convey a song to you, it's entirely a matter of me properly transforming my internal into a musical piece and then a musical performance and conveying that to you through the performance so that hopefully you would get that unique personal thing that came out of me and that would hit you. In my opinion, the best pop artists are the ones who maintain a specific personality and cover a lot of eclectic ground with that personality. For me, the quality of a piece of pop music is very much a matter of the ratio of how good it is and how effective it is to how popular it is. So if it's less popular and more effective and compelling, I tend to push that. So this is the indie ethos. In general, good pop musicians are not known, they're not successful, and they need to be propelled up by an audience of some sort and by support of some sort. I think that pop artists are always looking for those holy grails of inspiration, those artists that like, wow, I can take your system and apply it to my structure. I could do essentially what you're doing with my own soul. When they make it look really easy to do that. And I spent a good chunk of my life, probably 20 years, on that pursuit in myself. I studied it in college. It's hard to know how much one means it when one talks like this. So I've certainly written more than 1,000 songs, like with chords and lyrics that I could play through with the sheet. I've probably recorded about maybe 600, like on a laptop or whatever. I've recorded on an official album, probably 200 or 300 songs. I've played on stage with about 30 or 40 bands. I've had about 4 of my own bands where I was like the leader and singer-songwriter of the group. So I've just been all over the world in terms of recording, producing, performing, starting bands, writing songs, like that whole thing. I understand like every aspect of it. I was very, very interested in it. And also the various like social forces, cultural movements, why bands become popular, what I call entertainment theory, like why some things are just like work better or are more compelling, quicker to people, how you hook people. All that stuff is just utterly fascinating to me. How you can listen to a song like 10 times and each time the lyrics and the musicality of it will have a slightly different effect on you. I look for songs that have that like infinite shelf life where like no matter how many times you listen to it, it can still offer you a little bit of something new or something that you hadn't noticed before, or the lyrics might mean something new to you as you have more life experience. Those are the things that I really like in pop music. As my own pop band, alternative, kind of somewhat comedic and somewhat serious, metamodern pop. I did a band called Stein. Stein was my big like swan song. That went on about 10 years. We had more than 30 performing members, I believe, because people would, lose interest. People weren't interested in the first place. People would get in fights with each other or me or sleep with my girlfriend or whatever. And so there's a lot of turnover. I've worked with a lot of really talented musicians. My music is very difficult because every song has like a different idea behind it. You can't just keep doing the same thing. This was a serious flaw to my approach. I don't think it was a good idea at all, but it was just kind of what was natural to me. And I myself was never really talented enough to pull it off, and nor were the musicians that I worked with for the most part. But we had moments where what we were doing really worked. To cut to the end, I will say, like, I never really had a chance. There was never really any hope for me, and I kind of knew it the whole time. So I want to kind of explain how that works and how you come to learn that and what it means and whether it's actually true. Because I've kind of changed my identity from a musician to a yoga guy / podcaster, whatever I am now. I play music. I love to play. I love to sing. I go out and will play songs maybe once a week or so for people. I play on my own maybe once a week, various instruments. I'm generally involved in some remote recording project. Because I've shifted that identity, I'm pretty much over pop music. It's not a special interest anymore. I'm not excited to learn about new bands. I feel like there's just so much good stuff out there that you can't even do it anymore. There's either like really corporate commercial stuff that's like good, whatever, or there's like really, really independent kind of stuff that's also like good, and I'd go and see it live, but it's not It's not the same thing as in the 90s where you would really like get an album and like worship it for a while or really get into it. And that was kind of the process that I really enjoyed. If Tool put out an album right now, I'd like listen to it a couple times and think it was cool. But like when Tool used to put out an album, I would get so excited about it and it would just be like looping in my car and when I'm working and just everywhere. I just don't really do that anymore. And I think a lot of us don't really do that anymore. It seems like music's kind of only good for like dating now. I don't really have any other reasons to play music. I generally listen to people talking because I talk now. I've now told you enough about my weird 90s dad alt-rock obsession with strange pop music that makes you feel weird things that you've never felt before. And I know that most people find my taste in music despicable, but I will just tell you it is a very hard-earned taste, and it's a very critically thought about taste in music that I have. I always just say, take it with a grain of salt, but give this a listen, try it out, see if you like it. I hope you enjoy my story, but I'm going to kind of open up about what it's been like to be a musician for such a long time and to take it very, very seriously and have it be my passion, my career, my special interest for a very long time, starting from that kind of childish dream of being a rock star and culminating in where we are today. Almost anyone would probably say I have a complex at this point about my musicianship. I'm very strange at this point about it. I still love to go out and play songs for people. I still love to sing and dance and perform and play musical instruments, accompany people, all that stuff. I just love doing it, but I can't tie my identity to it at all. That becomes toxic very quick. It almost wrecked my life, I would say. That's a pretty fair way of putting it. It almost wrecked my life. What does that even mean, though, to a holistic spiritualist? I think that my decision to stop identifying as a musician and pursuing musicianship as my thing was a wise decision that opened up more possibilities, reduced my personal limitations, and allowed me to love playing music once again in a way that I hadn't for quite a while. I generally don't like to play music for my friends or family or people I'm dating or anything like that, or people I work with, anything like that, because I feel that them experiencing me playing music will harm our relationship. Like they will have a negative, or they will have a more negative opinion about me having seen me perform, especially my music for them. So I've avoided that most of my life. And at the very same time, I've never really had any problem performing or playing for strangers. That's kind of where I go. I don't mind that at all. I don't even mind doing it badly for strangers. But of course, I mean, at this point, the only real utility that it has for me is to do it for my loved ones and the people around me and in the moment. So I've had to open up that part of myself a lot. And I think that that's really the thing that is making me happy with my own musicianship at this point. So I did a video about my mother, Josephine. She was really awesome. She was a person who had a real eye for the remarkable, and everybody loved to be around her. She had a really supportive and nurturing energy. Everybody who was around her kind of felt at home. And some of my friends, like who would come over, my brothers and my friends would come over, and they'd kind of feel closer with our mom than with like their parents at home sometimes in certain ways, just in the sense that she really had an ability to make little people feel heard and listened to and understood. I certainly attribute my artistic and intellectual and passionate side of my personality to her. As a person, I hope to be some sort of continuation of her energy into the world and her genetics, I suppose. I did a whole video on how she died. At the time when it happens, things don't really stand out as much as they will later. But like looking back on it, it is super bizarre, coincidental, strange that my mother died when her youngest son reached 18, the age of 8, like my 18th birthday, in the night, precisely the moment where technically your parental responsibility is finished. Obviously, there's no evidence to suggest that that was deliberate or anything like that. But that's remarkable to me. That's a very weird coincidence. That's part of why I interpret, I felt like a large part of my responsibility in the wake of that was to carry on what she was carrying on, and perhaps even to carry the burden of her identity and what she was struggling with. I feel like I have continued her struggle as well. A struggle of a sensitive person trying to find a place in a kind of Simpsons-y world, a kind of like, this is so crazy that it's tripping me out. I'm being encouraged to participate in it, but it is totally nuts kind of existence. And I have this condition which ChatGPT is saying may become a condition someday, but is not real currently, called hypersensitive reward system, which means that the way that my body deals with trauma and grief is a little weird. My reaction to a traumatic event is kind of similar to what I would consider a normal reaction to winning the lottery, or like meeting the woman of your dreams, or whatever, your fantasy is, like having that come true. I get that when terrible things happen. So I'm almost like addicted to it because it's so awesome to experience like a year of total elation and a sense of clarity of purpose and meaning and direction. And it's hard. I mean, I can go into this separately, but my body seems to respond to things in a kind of backwards way. And I mean, we're trying to figure this out. It's not even like a big thing, but it is a little bizarre. When I lost my mom, this somehow got channeled into the way for me to fulfill my sort of ancestral legacy to her is to be a pop songwriter, to be an artist, and particularly a pop songwriter. And it was just sort of an intuitive thing. I do remember there was like a moment where a short time before she died, we were listening to the radio and there was like an Elton John song or something on. She had just kind of remarked, like, that's the most impressive thing I can think of. That's the most amazing feat that a human is capable of, is to organize all these instruments and music into something like what Elton John's doing right now. Like, what an amazing, graceful thing for a person. And I don't know if I internalized that at the time, but it definitely popped up later. And I'm like, that's it. That's the thing. It didn't come out of nowhere. That was when it became like my direction, my monological arrow, Cyclops direction. When I get that period, that like hypomania that can last a year or two in response to these major negative events in my life, I will take on a special interest. Parts of music have been the special interest repeatedly. So like one time it was music production, one time it was like music in bands, one time it was like the guitar. Talent either occurs when somebody has a native tendency to fidget or escape from reality in a way that involves music. If that's occurring, then they'll be talented at music. The other one is if they're around music a lot, if they have a musical family and musical concepts, proper tonal production is introduced to them very young, they'll internalize it very young. In those two cases, you'll have what's called talent. I had neither of those. My mom was a music fan, but nobody played. I didn't go to concerts. I didn't know what a bass guitar was. I didn't listen to a Tom Petty album and understand, oh, that's the guitar, that's the drums, that's the harmony vocals. I had no idea what was going on. I just kind of liked things or didn't really like them or whatever, mostly based on the message or the feel. Like a lot of teenagers, I started getting into music because other kids were into music and I was trying to be cool. I didn't give a crap about it, but I got Green Day and Metallica and Pink Floyd and Alanis Morissette being like four of the ones that really stuck with me, Nine Inch Nails. Those kind of stuck with me for quite a while. And they became my kind of teen identity. Me and my friends like this, or me and the cool kids like this kind of music, because it represents these particular values, or I fit in with this image. I'm a cool person who likes cool music. At the same time, this guy, I don't even know nobody named Old James. This kid and me, he went to my school. We met at this kid named Bob's house at a sleepover party that we weren't invited into the house for. And we got really cold, but that was how we first bonded, and it was an amazing bonding. We had an amazing immediate comedy rapport. He made me laugh so hard in ways that I hadn't experienced other than with my brothers before that, or my family members. So James and I hit it off immediately when he was Jimbo or Jim, little Jimmy boy, little boy, different guy. When we were in middle school and high school, we'd go to my house a lot of the time because nobody was there except us kids. So we could get up to all kinds of no good and shenanigans and do all kinds of things. And we wander all over town. Kids don't do that anymore, Kids don't like wander around town with their bikes and everything. It's so rare to see, but it was wonderful. Like a little street gang. You just kind of pack around, get up to funny stuff, little funny things. And we went over to a pawn shop, and James came from a musical family, so he kind of knew what was up, but they had guitars there. I had never touched a guitar. I don't know that I'd ever really seen a guitar up close or anything. I didn't understand, you rake your finger across it or whatever to make the strings rattle, and that goes in a magnetic thing that goes into a speaker system. I didn't know any of this, none of this. And James kind of was showing off, he plugged it in, he knew a couple things his dad had showed him, some chords. And I was like, wow, this is sweet. And I have like $50. Let's get the crappiest two guitars. We'll save up, we'll get amps later, and that wah-wah pedal, what is a wah-wah pedal? It's like, so you have it like this, like, and then you push it down. Okay, why would a person use that? And they're like, well, check it out. Okay, but why would a person, what's that for? How do you know when you want to use that or not? I was so mystified. And then the radio comes through it. Why is the radio coming through this pedal? So this opened up a fantastic world for me. James taught me everything he knew about guitar. We had the guitars. We'd take them over to my house. We got a drum set. We got all the instruments. I would get into this leadership of the monkey gang thing with my friends. We did this thing called spy missions. I'd try and get everybody to do pranks outside at night, go knock on people's door. And then we figured out you could kind of get into buildings after hours, and it would be sneaking around the building. We didn't steal or vandalize or anything. We would just try to get into a grocery store and see if we could get through it and explore everything. Or the college campus was right by my house, and we would go in. Those buildings were really easy to get into, and there were very wide open spaces with not any people. So we would sneak around these buildings and spy missions, and it was really fun for us. We would try and kind of up the game, get to the point where we're actually eavesdropping on people and following them around and stuff. I think there was kind of a shared recognition that we were getting too old to get away with that, and we were getting more to the age where if you were doing that, you were probably up to no good. One summer, my family rented out a handy cam, which recall nobody has cell phones. A camera isn't a thing that people generally have unless somebody in the family is in broadcast or has a weird interest in that sort of thing. And I immediately, once I had that thing in my hands, I would not let anyone touch it. I was a total jerk about it. I snuck off and I was starting to make movies. I was enlisting the other kids. I was making structures. I figured out stop motion. You could just record a little bit and move things little by little and animate. And so I fell in love with filmmaking. That was kind of my first artistic thing I really fell into. And then I was trying to convince all my friends to make let's do a parody of this or a spoof of this, or we went to Goodwill and got a bunch of little action figures and made a set piece and had we'd take turns making little presentations on it. And unfortunately, all of those recordings are gone now. I have almost none of them. They were lost in a horrible tragedy. And Otherwise, I'd be showing them. Maybe I'm kind of lazy with stuff like that. But so anyways, this became the new thing like that. I became totally obsessed. Whenever Jim was around, he would show up and kick down the door with his guitar, and I'd be sleeping, and he would just improvising songs. Adam's asleep. He's sleeping on the bed. It got better though, and James always had a really great voice. We learned to harmonize with each other. So it was starting to kind of move in like a real direction. And the way my mind works is very, very strange. Like I had to know all of a sudden all the chords, all the scales, all the music theory stuff, all the rhythms, all the patterns, and it didn't occur to me yet to just mimic or study other people's guitar playing. It was more about the structural, like the knowledge base of like how music works. With Jim and a lot of my other friends, they didn't have that kind of thing where they wanted to escalate it and bring it to like higher and higher levels and like start a band, start playing shows, record an album, finish a song. It just is this weird thing about my way I do things is I'm kind of a completion person, and like to embark on something, I really get that like the end in sight. I shoot the arrow. So that felt like unfulfilled at the time. So I started going out and playing with other musicians, and all of a sudden I'm in these like local bands like, oh yeah, well, we don't need a songwriter, but like if you can play the bass, you can be in our band. So I get in this pretty popular band that was like way better than me. And so that was really embarrassing. And I had to like cut my teeth, and like I learned really quickly like how to play in a band. And then I started playing in all sorts of different bands and starting my own bands. And I recorded a couple albums. My first big relationship ended, which had been like the relationship in the wake of losing my mother. So I felt like really lost and empty. And I went through a really crazy hypersensitive reward system, light switch up. Got really into producing, and I made a whole album mostly related to feelings of alienation and like romantic yearning. And it sucks, weirdly, like everything I've ever done kind of sucks. Like I've never really musically done anything that I would say like right now is like, yeah, check this out, it's like awesome. I have a lot of things that I'd be like, oh, if you're into like Frank Zappa, you'd like this. And then like all throughout college, I got really into the finer arts of like production. I started studying like the history of rock and pop and like how bands start or how things start to work. Because I never really made it out of that, starting phase of it. This was where you kind of start the quest for your thing, your artistic thing, like trying to, in the sense of negatives, trying to get rid of all the stuff you don't want, all the baggage you don't want, and in the positive sense, trying to build the things you do want into your musical brand or identity. So I did all that, and I ended up with this thing called Stein. Stein was a rock band based on my own kind of personal spiritual mythology, always about duality. The like cardinal rule is to go the other direction, from song to song, from moment to moment, from album to album. That's very difficult to do for the band members, and I was a total pain in the butt to work with. From the perspective of someone working with me, I would probably seem totally negligent because I was just trying to juggle way too many things at once, and I really didn't have the structure to make it happen in the first place. So Stein put out like 3 or 4 albums that I would consider like albums. We did a lot of really, really great shows. I mean, we had a lot of bad shows, and we had a lot of really great shows. So I'm proud of that, and I'm done with that. As far as the Stein band and everything, I just thought it was a really beautiful thing that not a lot of people probably understood what was going on most of the time, perhaps including me. But I mean, there it was, that was my thing done on stage, on albums, for people. So, I mean, I feel good about it. I have always had this vision for like the ultimate like Stein album. I have it all like planned out and everything, and I have for a very long time, but I don't know if I'll ever actually do it because, again, I'm still in the position where I don't really have the resources to do it. I'm not in a position where it's like feasible. My whole actual life fell apart because I was trying so hard to make this rock band work. I mean, I had a rock house. It was all like band people and art people, poetry people. We did like monthly theme parties, and everyone was involved in all these kind of incestuous different acts, we were a lot of the Portland people doing art, and Stein was just a little part of that. But I got to the point where I definitely realized like, okay, this is where I have to choose. Like, am I going to do the final Stein album to death, or should I just kind of cut it off and try something different? And that's what I chose. The defining moment, I would say, in that decision was I had been working on an album for about 5 years called Opposites Attract. And we had done an album called Shades, which was kind of my oddball songs, sentimental, not at all the thing. We were a basement party band, and we started doing this set of like Adam's more cerebral, like lovey kind of stuff. And I think the band really hated that phase, and I lost a lot of members. And so I went, okay, like this isn't, I could strip things down and do this, but I want to keep like the band. So I said, okay, let's go the opposite direction. Opposites Attract. This is going to be a disco dance album about sex. It's going to be funny and stupid. Those are like the rules. And I wrote the album, and about 5 years later, we finally had like a recorded version with all the musicians done in a real studio. I had the demo. It was not mastered yet. Or I mean, I had the pre-master. It was not mastered yet. And I put this. I put the CD in my car. I had this girlfriend, Jet. She's the one who taught me the stuffed animals, and she was into tarot. She was really awesome and beautiful and hilarious and cool. And I hope she still is. I picked her up at the airport, and she got in my car, and I said, "Hey, you know, this is the album. This is Opposites Attract. Here it is." And I put it in. The first song started. There's drums, and then all the instruments kick in, and there's this kind of goofy, puppety, like singing chant thing, and then it goes into me rapping about sex and.
I got a message that applies to Homo sapiens. We gonna roll every way down the lesbian and reflect upon whatever it means to be in love again. Lower yourself from the sky down to the ground. Let the Stein sound groove it out on your mound. A lot right here now. Get your head in the clouds. We gonna start real simple and become profound.
She was just like, you know, turn that off. That's ridiculous. And the song kept playing. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is actually ridiculous. She is correct. And I kind of just lost all interest in that project at that moment. Decided I wasn't going to master it or release it. Just that I didn't care about it. All the people who had recorded it with me were like out of the picture at that point. They didn't care about it. It wasn't really for anyone anymore. I wasn't planning to perform it anymore. We had already been performing it for years, material-wise. And so I was like, okay, yeah, this is a really good cutoff point because there's a lot of pressure on me and I get no reward from fulfilling it other than just to say I've done it and have yet another Stein album that like is ridiculous. And I don't mind doing a ridiculous thing in my 20s and 30s, but I kind of recognize then that like getting beyond your 20s and 30s, time to adjust away from ridiculous unless you really want to be ridiculous. And I don't. I'm ridiculous, but I'm also serious. I didn't feel like the serious part was being honored enough. So years have passed, and a couple of people are kind of mad at me, but nobody, it didn't affect anything. The whole thing, the whole band, Stein was an enormous success. I got to shred improvised guitar solos on stage. I got to play these songs that came out of my mind and heart and expressed things that recapitulated and reconciled my own personal issue. It was a therapy then, just as it is now, art therapy, getting things sorted out in your soul. But the special interest itself is what I consider to be the real Stein. It doesn't have to be a band or rock or music. It's just that elusive thing that your soul wants you to find a way that can be the thing that you are and do. As American dreamy as we can all be, as much as every video might tell you, manifest your reality and the world's your oyster, anyone can do it. That is true, but what you get sometimes as an economist myself, you measure and weigh what that costs versus what you gain, and you go, as much as that would be cool, I actually don't want it enough to purchase it. Everything is a purchase. I love being a musician, but I don't feel like that trying to be a pop artist was appropriate as I got a little older. What I was doing at the time, I had actually finally found a thing that I can do that's sort of related to art. I was a music teacher. I started at a school that was actually like piano and singing for parents and children at the same time in a big class. So it was extremely intimidating and scary to start. And then I started really loving it, and I started loving my relationships with the students and the parents, and what the things that we would grow together I would notice, and I felt really good and prideful about that. And I was making better money, and I found better jobs that were more appropriate for me, making connections with teenagers in after school, like kind of high school age programs. That's kind of the only way I can connect with teens. I don't really like connecting with teens in private lessons because they're so cool. And then finally I got into an academy where I was just a private lessons and small group teacher, and I did like rock band camp kind of stuff. That was where it was really like, okay, like I'm making money and I'm essentially doing the same thing I always have been, like writing songs, learning songs, running bands. That's that's kind of how you educate this generation of people whose parents wanted to be rock stars. They don't care about it anymore. They're not interested in the same way. They would rather release a TikTok video showing that they can play a riff than, play a tribute act on stage. That wouldn't be particular. That would be like a thing that they would do. Like, what the heck, fun weekend. So I found this identity where I finally, it really culminated in a moment where I was still dealing with the loss of Jet. It was months old or whatever, and I was dealing with the fact that I was totally out of money. Teaching was just kind of keeping the lights on, and I had been kind of driven out of my home, so I was in just this random rental with people I didn't know. I had totally dropped the ambitions of finishing the album or continuing the band or ever doing a band again or doing the Stein thing ever again. And I was sitting on the back porch, and we had a tortoise. My roommate's tortoise was walking across the lawn, and I was just like, it finally clicked, and everything clicked. And I'm like, just this is heaven. There's nothing missing. I wanted things back when. Now we're in a different moment, and actually, this is awesome. This is a sunny day. On Monday, I'll go and teach my classes. I'll be an awesome teacher. I'll get by. Everything will be okay. I love my job. I love that I get to play music at work and build relationships that way. And that was kind of when I was done thinking of myself as a musician. And then when I stopped thinking about myself as a musician, it occurred to me that teaching music didn't make me enough money that I was really satisfied with. So, at that point, it was just like, wow, not being a musician, it just gets better and better. Like, holy cow. And it's still a case like I can pull out a guitar and play a couple chords or whatever, and oh, you play. Like, nobody cares, but that's fun. That's cool. I like that, and it's fun for me. At this point, that's pretty much my entire relationship with music. It's an ecstatic activity for me. It helps me to process feelings and connect with people, and it's cool and it's fun to do. I think part of the promise of Integral for me is this idea of like different lines kind of integrating together and bringing things together, like recapitulating themes. It's sad to not be a musician anymore. Like, I have to give up a lot to not be a musician anymore. And I've had a lot of special interests. So there's a sort of constant sense of loss that I don't get to spend my entire life playing an instrument, making films, or writing fiction or coding. Like, I have to spend my time in ways where I get a certain amount of all the things that I want. But definitely the things I want out of life are way more than the time offered. This is why boredom is such a strange concept to me. Just in terms of the setup I have, I understand how you could get into a boring situation. The dream is to integrate all these things, though. That the thing that I do would involve filmmaking and music and writing, spy missions and coding and yoga and Integral and spirituality. All these special interests that I've had over the years, they could all come together into one thing. Unthink Me is like the closest thing to that I found so far. I could realistically see incorporating all those elements into this one thing. Very grateful that this platform exists to do this sort of thing. In this case, I'm strictly talking about the upper quadrants, the me stuff. Integral is really appealing to me just as a person who has found a way to put all these different special interests into one category and hopefully even grow that to embrace more of my special interests. This is Unpacking Ideas video. I've never really told all of that information to anyone ever, and I'm not sure that I just accomplished it there, as I often say, but these videos are really important for me to structure my thoughts. Where I want to bring it forward here is I want to produce music for this I haven't had much luck with that so far, producing it on my own. So what I'm doing now is I'm reaching out to artists that I know and asking if I can, record them or get some samples from them, just an easier sort of thing. And that would be like local music that would be totally like unheard before from really talented people. So I go into a lot of topics, and I'm never sure whether the audience will perceive that this is a fit with what we're doing. I've now done a couple videos on music, and I'm probably going to do a couple more. Don't think that I'm like switching to music or anything. This is just one video I've wanted to do for a while. As an aspiring young artist, I took a lot of wrong turns. I made a lot of adjustments, and I have a really clear perspective on it at this point. So if you're one of these people yourself, I hope that any of this is maybe some sort of like encouragement to you. I will repeat the thing that is often repeated to me when this topic comes up, that you got to just think of art as passion and fun, expression and community. I mean, that's what it is. It's a hobby. I wouldn't recommend anybody pursue it. And I would say this about YouTube too. Like, I wouldn't recommend anybody pursue it unless it's like something that is already happening on its own organically. I think if you have the goal of being a musician, that might actually get in the way of you becoming a musician. If your natural expression becomes music making, I think that's going to be a fit for life, and that's going to be a thing that you're going to stick to and you're going to become interesting in, even if no one ever acknowledges it. Always have what you need. Don't allow yourself to starve, but understand you're going to make sacrifices and you're going to do this. There's a good chance it's not going to end up being anything to anyone but you and a couple other people. That's usually the way it goes. Even if if you have something to offer, it can be a really meaningful thing. I think almost like that it can be more meaningful than if you happen to like luck out or know the right people or have the ability or just do everything the right way to kind of be more of a flash in the pan or something that kind of more people saw. I don't know if that would be as rewarding as grinding it out. My perspective on it at this point is I just see it as an extremely wise set of choices. I think it was really wise of me to pursue art. I don't regret anything. I'm really happy with everything that happened. I'm really satisfied. I've come back to kind of loving just it for what it is and what it means, at least to me. I'm a fan of myself, and I don't need to like explain that, to me. And I think that at the point where that's really true, it makes you way happier with everything that you've done. I feel totally blessed and grateful for the entire experience. It was an incredible privilege. Just like Chris Ballou or anybody, Wonderful or anybody, I'm going to still make music. I'm still going to write songs. I'm still going to jam, and without really any plan for it, but just as an ecstatic thing that I do that I love to do. I found that the students who enjoyed playing music with me in that setting and enjoyed playing music then at home and going over that stuff again, those were the students that got better. And the students that didn't enjoy it didn't get better. So my goal as a teacher was always the enjoyment part. And I'm an awesome teacher at that, because the way I learned it was just with Jim, us playing guitar together and having fun. That's how I got better at playing guitar. So that's what I teach. Once that joy and love is well established, the improvement happens naturally, and it's more about just kind of coaching and helping people find their direction and their next immediate goal and how to escalate it. Again, it's all things I've done. So I'm just happy to teach music as to write and record original material. So that was all. I mean, all that stuff happened, a good 7 years ago now. I was in a 2-year relationship. I think I played the guitar with her present like twice. Coming from in my 20s, probably my whole 20s, you would pretty much, I had a guitar with me everywhere I went, I would say. I definitely played every day, generally for hours, especially if I was in a band. And of course, as a teacher, you're playing hours and hours. But now that I look at it, especially thinking about it as a continuation of the story of my mother, the legacy of my mother, I think that it's a very appropriate and fitting conclusion that my relationship to this 18 years or so of taking music very seriously and thinking it was my identity, to have it end unexpectedly and look back on it all of a sudden as this incredible treasure the whole time, that it wasn't on its way to becoming something. The entire time it was happening, it was the thing that it needed to be. It was precisely the thing that it ought to have been. It was engineered as an expression of the self. And like so many things in life, looking back at it, that's the treasure. You know, that's the pot of gold. It's the quest itself. Whether you're the big hit or just the opening act, you're still there at the same show. You don't get to be that person, but you're there at the same event. You're experiencing it in the same place with less responsibility. So I look back at all those relationships and all that music and all that fun that we had, and it's the only thing I really find regrettable and tragic is that I always just wanted it to be more, and I was never just satisfied with what it was at any given moment. And it's like at almost any given moment, it was just so beautiful, perfect.
One thing that I would desperately website at
To me, there's nothing more special than a one-on-one relationship with an artist, you know, where you're the only fan of that artist. I think that's very special. That would have to be like the most special thing. It's like in the upper right quadrant, it's easy to look at it and feel like everything went wrong, and you can see, you know, this was wrong, this was wrong, and this was bad, and should have done more of this. Kept in hindsight yourself. All that you have at the end of that time is all those memories, and you're faced with the stark reality of whether it was beautiful or not. So I leave you with this rambling rant I try to talk about music here when okay. Namaste to you all. Your expressions are beautiful. This is it. Everything's fine right now. Everything's perfect right now. Everything is perfect right now. It's not leading up to something. This is it. All there is. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about it? And be here, empty, not identified. Just this. And thank you for watching.